All right. Well, here we all are, I hope. And we're going to start with just a few preliminary ideas, a few things that you need to know that you probably already do know, but I'll just clarify them before we begin. So, sound. We're dealing with sound. And all sound is made up of vibrations. So, that sound or the sound of anything vibrates the air, and that we perceive that with our ears as sound. If the sound has a steady vibration, that creates a musical pitch. So a sound like is not vibrating necessarily at a very steady frequency. The frequency of those vibrations changes, and so it's just perceived as kind of a sound. But if it's that is a sound that has a steady frequency, and that creates a musical pitch. So the faster the vibrations, the higher the pitch. So is higher than which means is vibrating faster than And on the keyboard, as you go to the right, things get higher, and as you go to the left, pitches get lower. So that's the basics of pitch and the keyboard right there. So two different pitches. If you have two pitches, like let's say that one and that one, the distance between those two pitches is called an interval. And there's small intervals, like the distance from that pitch up to that pitch, or from that pitch down to that pitch is a small interval, or from this pitch up to here is a very big interval, or from this pitch down to there is a medium, large interval. But there's the first interval I want to talk about, a very important interval, is called the octave. And that's when one pitch is vibrating twice as fast as another pitch. That's called an octave, which is because if you start on any note on the keyboard, take this one, if you call that your first note, and you go up first, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth, from the first up to the eighth is an octave. Octave is from the Latin for eighth. So this note, this pitch, is vibrating twice as fast as this pitch. And if you go down, first, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth, from this pitch down to this pitch is also an octave. So this pitch is vibrating twice as fast as this pitch. And pitches that are an octave apart have the same name. So this pitch and this pitch have the same name. They're both D, if you want to know. But anyway, an octave is a pretty big jump. So each octave is divided into 12 smaller intervals. And you can see on the keyboard, if you look at the back part of the keyboard, let me just take this piece of paper. And maybe we can bring the camera in. So here at the back of the keys, each key is a half step apart from the key adjacent to it. So it doesn't really matter if it's black or white. If they're next to each other, they're a half step apart. So if you take this key, it's a half step from this key, and it's also, so it's a half step up from here is to that key, and a half step down from here would be to that key. Now, the white keys obviously extend further than the black keys, and so it's a little confusing because they kind of come in contact with each other in some situations where you have, like, this key is a half step from that key, and it's also a half step from that key, so it's not a half step from that key, but down here at this part of the keyboard, these two white keys are touching each other, so that's not a half step, but that is a half step. So that's a little bit confusing. But if you just look at this back part of the keyboard, that is where you can see all the relationships clearly. So any two keys that are next to each other are a half step apart, whether they're black or white. And if you go two half steps, like if you start here and then go up a half step and then another half step, the distance between the key that you started on and the key you ended on is a whole step. So those two keys are a whole step apart. Or if you start here and go up one half step and then another half step, those two keys are a whole step apart. If you start here and go up a half step and then another half step, those two keys are a whole step apart. So, and of course they're half steps and whole steps whether they're going up or down. So if you start here, go to the key next to it down, that's a half step down. If you start here and go to the key next to it up, that's a half step up. If you start here and go down two half steps, down to there, from there to there is a whole step. And if you start here and go up two half steps, from there to there is also a whole step going up. So that's half steps and whole steps there on the keyboard. And if you start on any note and go up 12 half steps, when you come to the 13th note, you'll be an octave higher. So if we say, for example, start on this note, go up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 half steps, this note is an octave higher than this note. So if you call this the first note, if you go up a half step, this would be the 13th note. First, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth, 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th, 13th. So, that is another thing you're going to need to know. What else here? So the other thing that you need to know about how this all works in order to get started today is that on the keyboard, the pitches that are played by the white keys have names, and they're named by the first 7 letters of the alphabet, A, B, C, D, E, F, G. And then when you get to the 7th one, when you move to the next one, the 8th one, of course that one is an octave above the one you started on, the 8th one. So then you start over again with the same name. So A, B, C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C, D, E, F, G. And you can see on the keyboard that the black keys here form a repeating pattern of groups of 2 and groups of 3. So you start here, here's a group of 2, here's a group of 3, 2, 3, 2, 3, 2, 3, 2, 3, 2, 3, 2, 3. And you can use that to orient yourself on the keyboard. So the note A, or the pitch A, is always played by a key that's between the middle black key of the group of 3 and the rightmost or top black key of the group of 3. So this white key in between those two is an A. So if you start down here, this white key between those two is an A. Find this group of 3. This white key is an A. Find this group of 3. That white key is an A. That one is an A. Find that. A. So that's how you can find A. And then you just go up consecutively by letter. So A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and then you start over again. A, B, C, D, E, F, G, start over again. A, B, C, D, E, F, G, etc., etc. And going down, of course, you have to do the alphabet in reverse. So A, G, F, E, D, C, B, A, G, F, E, D, C, B, A, etc., that way. So that is what you need to know in order to get started on our first worksheet.